Welcome to the IT-Free-Training video on fine-grained password policies. Fine-grained password policies allow the administrator to define different password policies for different users. This video will look at how you can create multiple password policies and how to apply them to particular users. Previously, if you wanted to have separate password policies, you would have no choice but to create separate domains. As shown here, if you had a secure domain, a child domain would need to be created in order to have multiple password policies. Having extra domains like these makes the network harder to administer. Multiple password policies in the same domain is a long-awaited feature in Active Directory. With fine-grained password policies, the administrator does not need to create multiple domains in order to have separate password policies. In order to start using fine-grained password or multiple passwords in the same domain, the domain needs to be a Windows Server 2008 domain functional level or higher. This essentially means that all your domain controllers in your domain need to be running Windows Server 2008 or above. Fine-grained passwords are also applied to users and groups other than OUs. This may seem a strange way to do it, but you will find that by doing it this way gives you more flexibility than if you applied the password policy to an OU. In order for Active Directory to apply different password policies to different users in the domain, it uses a password setting object, or PSO. It is not applied using group policy, as you may have expected it to be. A PSO is simply an object that contains password policy settings. It contains the same account and logout settings that you could configure using default domain policy. Since a PSO is not applied using group policy, it cannot be applied directly to an OU. Instead, a PSO is applied to users and groups directly. To understand how the process works, consider the default domain policy. This contains the password settings that will be used for the users in that domain. The default domain policy contains the default password settings for all users. If no other password settings have been applied, these settings will be applied to the users. Creating a password settings object in Active Directory allows you to override the password settings that were applied from the default domain policy. For example, if you had a number of users that worked in a secure area, you may want these users to have longer passwords than regular users. To do this, you would create a password settings object. This contains the same settings as the default domain policy. Thus, in order to have these users have a longer password than what is configured in the default domain policy, you would use the same settings as the default domain policy except for the option for the length of the password. Once the password settings object is created, it would then be applied to a group that contains all the secure users or directly to the users. You may also have other users that you want to apply different password settings to. For example, you may want to make sure that any service accounts that you have created on the network do not get locked out. For example, if they were to become locked out because the password expired. To do this, you could create another PSO with password settings that would not allow the account to become locked. This PSO is then applied to the service accounts. You can see that using PSOs gives you a lot of freedom. Any user that is not affected by a PSO will obtain the settings found in the default domain policy. In some cases, you may have multiple PSOs being applied to the same user or group. A single user can only have one set of password settings applied to them at one time. So what happens when multiple PSOs are applied to the one user? The password settings that are applied are determined by the setting in the PSO called password setting precedence. The value needs to be 1 or greater. If there are multiple PSOs applied to the same user, the PSO with the lowest priority or value will be used. If the administrator configures the PSO correctly, there should not be multiple PSOs with the same precedence level. If there are multiple PSOs assigned to the user with the same lowest level, For example, multiple PSOs all have the value of 1. The PSO with the lowest GUID will be applied. The GUID is a unique value that is assigned to all objects when they are created. A GUID is like a serial number for objects, so one of the PSOs will always have a lower GUID than the others, and that PSO will be applied. That is all the theory on multiple password policies. I will now change to my Windows Server 2008 R2 domain controller to look at how to implement multiple password policies in the one domain. First of all, I will open Active Directory users and computers from the Start menu to check that my domain is at the minimum domain functional level required for fine-grained password policies. To do this, I will right-click my domain and select the option Raise Domain Functional Level. In this case, the domain functional level is Windows Server 2008 R2. I only require Windows Server 2008 domain functional level, so this domain will support fine-grained password policies. If I exit out of here and go to the Users OU, I will open the group Laptop Users. On the Members tab, you can see the laptop users in the company. Since these users are mobile, the company would like additional security applied to the users that use laptop computers. You will notice that the users in here are from the New York and Washington OU. For this reason, it would not be possible to apply group policy for laptop users at the OU level if Active Directory supported password policy to be applied at the OU level. To apply a separate password policy to laptop users, I will exit out of here and open ADSI Edit from Administrative Tools under the Start menu. ADSI Edit is a low-level Active Directory editing tool that is used to modify the Active Directory database. Once open, I will right-click on ADSI Edit and select Connect To. In this case, the default option will connect to my domain, so I will accept the default by pressing OK. I will now expand down through the default naming context, the domain, system, and then down to the password settings container. To create a password settings object, right-click Password Settings Container and select New Object. In this case, there is only one object to choose from, the object MSDS Password Settings. Once I press Next, I will be asked a number of questions in regards to the settings that I want to use with the password object. All the questions asked in this wizard are in the description of this video with information about the required syntax for the values. The next question I will be asked is for a friendly name you would like to use to identify the PSO. Once I enter in a name and move on, the next screen will ask for the precedence number. This needs to be a value of 1 or above, with 1 having the highest priority if there is a conflict. In this case, I will use the value of 2 in case I want to create another PSO later on. I can then use the value of 1 to override the settings in this PSO if I choose to. The next setting in the wizard will ask if the password should be stored using reversible encryption. In this case, I will enter in false and move on. The next question will ask how many passwords you would like to save using the password history option in Active Directory. For this value, I will enter in 24 and move on. The next question will ask if you want to make sure that when passwords are changed, they must meet complex password requirements. In this case, I will enter in true and move on. The next screen will ask what the minimum length of the password should be. Since I am increasing the security of password requirements for laptop users, I will use the value of 10, forcing the users to have a password that is at least 10 characters long. The next screen will ask what the minimum age for the password needs to be. Settings like these use the format of day, hours, minutes, and seconds. In this case, I will set it to 1 day, which means the user will only be able to change their password once per day. On the next screen, I need to enter in the time period that the user will be able to use the password before it expires and it will need to be changed. On the next screen, I will be asked to enter in the number of incorrect passwords that can be entered before the user account will be locked out. In this case, I will enter in 5 and move on. The next option indicates the time period before the incorrect password counter is reset. In this case, I will enter in half an hour. This means that if the user enters in an incorrect password, it will take half an hour before the counter recording this incorrect password will be reset. On the next screen, I can enter in a value for how long the account will stay locked out before it will automatically be unlocked. In this case, I will enter in 1 hour. If you want the account to stay locked out until an administrator unlocks it, you need to enter in the value of never, encased in brackets. If you enter in a value of never, the account would stay locked out until an administrator unlocked it. This will complete the wizard. Once I press Finish, the password settings object will be created. The next step is to associate the password settings object with a user or group. To do this, I will right-click the object and select Properties. This will show the attributes of the object. The attribute that I need to edit is MSDS PSO applies to. Once I select it, I will press the Edit button and then add the laptop users group. This is all that needs to be configured. The password settings object is now being applied to all the users in this laptop group. To check that this is happening, I will now exit ADSI Edit and go back into Active Directory users and computers. To check which password settings object or PSO is being applied to which user, I will first need to go into the View menu and make sure that Advanced Features is enabled. Otherwise, the settings I need to view will not be visible. Next, I will expand down to the Sales OU and open the properties for one of the users. This user is a member of the laptop group, so the new password policy applies to them. To see that this has occurred, I will select the tab Attribute Editor. The attribute that I am interested in will not appear by default, so I will need to select the Filter option and then select Constructed. The reason the attribute does not appear is that it is generated in real time and thus is not stored in the user account like a normal attribute would be. The attribute that I am interested in is MSDS Resultant PSO. Once I select this and open the attribute, notice that at the start of the LDAP distinguished name is the friendly name laptop password for the PSO I created earlier. This concludes the information that you will need to know for the exam. However, I'm not quite done with the video yet. For those that are interested, I will go through an example of how you can use shadow groups with password policy objects. I will also look at the script that you can use to automate the upkeep of the shadow group. Using a shadow group and a script, you can apply a password policy object to an OU. First of all, I will create the shadow group under the Washington Secure OU. A shadow group is a standard group and thus is a concept rather than a special group. The concept behind a shadow group is that it will contain all the users in an OU. This means that by applying a PSO to the shadow group effectively means that you will be applying that PSO to an OU. The problem with shadow groups is that they need to be kept up to date manually or using a script. In this case, I will download a script to automate the process. To download the script, I will first open Internet Explorer and open Google. There are a number of different scripts that are available for updating shadow groups. The script that I will use is not the most complex script available, but it does the job. In order to find it, I will enter in the parameter site : followed by the site dx21.com. This will limit the Google search to only this website, and then I will enter in the title of the page, Creating and Managing Shadow Groups. Once I open the page, the article explains how the script works. If you want to learn more about VB Script, this article is worth reading. At the bottom is the link to download the script. In this case, I will download the zip file to the desktop and decompress the files. Once the script has been decompressed, I will right-click and select Edit. The script needs to be edited to tell it where the OU is located and where the shadow group is located. The script uses LDAP format. The first line I need to edit indicates where the OU is located. Since it is LDAP format, I need to enter the location in reverse, starting with OU equals secure, and then ending with the last part of the domain, DC equals local. The next line is group location. For this, I can copy and paste the OU location used in the previous line, and then add CN equals secure shadow group to the start of the line. This is all the changes that need to be made to the script, so I will close and save it. Now that the script has been modified, I need to run it. Since I want the group to be updated by itself, I will open the task scheduler from the Start menu. Using the task scheduler, I will be able to schedule the script to run automatically once per day. To do this, right-click on Microsoft and select the option Create Basic Task. For the basic task, I will enter in the name for the task and a description for the task so that other administrators will know what this task does. Once this is entered and I press Next, the next screen will ask how often to run the task. I will accept the default of daily and move on. The next screen will ask what day the task should start and the time. I'm not too worried what time the task runs as long as it runs once per day. On the next screen, the wizard will ask what the task will do. In this case, I select the option to start a program and move on. On the next screen, I will browse to the location of the script on the desktop and open it. I'm not going to run the script this way. I am instead going to use the executable C script. C script is scripting host software that you can use to run scripts like VBScript and other supported script types. C script takes the file name of the script as an argument, so I will cut the script location and paste it in the arguments section. It is a lot easier to do it this way than typing the full path into the arguments section. Before I do this, I will add a parameter to the start of the line. This will be 2 forward slashes followed by B. This will indicate to C script to run in batch mode, and thus any output like dialog boxes created by the script will be suppressed. Now that I have finished creating the argument, I will use cut and paste to move it to the argument location. For the name of the executable, I will enter in C script. Now the task is configured to run C script with the parameter batch and the script name. I will press Next. This will end the wizard, and I can press Finish to create the basic task. The task has not run as yet. I can wait for it to run, but I would rather test it out first to make sure that it is working. To manually run the task, right-click the task and select the option Run. If I now go back into Active Directory Users and Computers and open the properties for the group and select the Members tab, notice that the 4 users located in the OU have been added to the shadow group. If I exit out of here and then delete one of the users, then go back to the task scheduler and rerun the task, the group will be updated to reflect the change. When I open the properties and select the Members tab, notice that there are only 3 members in the tab now. Once a day, this group will be updated automatically to match the users that are currently located in the secure OU. The next step is to create a PSO for the secure OU. To do this, I will once again open ADSI Edit from the Start menu, and then navigate down to the Password Settings container and create a new PSO. For the friendly name, I will enter in Secure OU PSO and press Next. For the password settings precedence, I will enter in 1. This will ensure that if a user is in the secure OU and also the laptop group, they will receive this password policy rather than the laptop password policy. For this example, the rest of the values do not matter that much, so I will quickly enter in some values. There is one value in the wizard that I will stop at and have a closer look at. For the value for account lockout duration, I want to configure so that the user account must be unlocked by an administrator. This requires a value of 0 be entered. However, if a value of 0 is entered, the wizard will generate an error at the end. The value that needs to be entered in here is never, encased in brackets. Now I can complete the wizard and the security policy object will be created. Now that the PSO has been created, I will open it and once again edit the attribute the PSO applies to object. I will now add security shadow group to the object. That's it. Once this is done, all the users in the secure OU will have this password policy applied to them. Because the password policy has the precedence set to 1, this will overwrite the other password policy configured to 2 if there is a conflict. The script that I configured will automatically update the shadow group membership once a day to ensure that it is correct. This shows you how you can use shadow groups to apply a password policy to an OU. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video from ITFreeTraining. For more videos, please feel free to subscribe. Thanks, and see you next time.